Afternoon, Brian.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Good.
Good.
All right, we are live. It is the first meeting of the ADA Fair Housing Advisory Board for 2021. It's February 1st. And I'm going to go ahead and take roll call. Jeff Berkowitz?
Call the meeting to order. My favorite part of the meeting.
Absolutely.
Would you call for the roll, please?
Yes. Jeff Berkowitz.
Present.
Eddie Brown does not appear to be present. Diane Corso.
Present.
Kathy Linz is not present. Brian Stanley.
Here.
Martha Thompson is absent. And Kathleen Wickens.
Here.
Thank you. And then we have Commissioner Westpool
Here.
and Deb Eversole, who's going to be the Fair Housing Rep. Thank you.
Here.
Aaron Klein, City Engineer.
Here.
And then I'm Elizabeth Swecki, and I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and the board to move forward from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Well, the first thing we have to do is confirm chairperson and vice chairperson, and I'll open it up for anybody who would like to volunteer for either one of those positions. Don't everybody speak at once.
I nominate Jeff Berquist for chair.
Thank you. Diane, would you consider staying on as vice chair?
Yes, that's fine.
Hearing no other nominations, I would like a vote on keeping me as chairperson and Diane Corso as vice chair for the year 2021. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, you get the position. You can't see Elizabeth. We're social distancing. She's so far back there, but I can see her laughing under her face.
I also have to run it from here.
Approval of the minutes from our September 21st, 2021. I'm sure you all got copies of them because I did. Elizabeth's excellent about making sure we got all the form. I would entertain a motion. Are there any corrections, changes, or modifications that need done? There is just one, and we will correct it. I am not CEO of Brookshire Hathaway Home Services. I think Warren Buffett might take offense to that, but we will get that changed. Any corrections, modifications other than that? I would entertain.
Approve the minutes.
I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the September 21st, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Deborah, we can't see you, but would you like to tell us a little bit about your new involvement in the community development program as the administrator and now working with the new fair housing rep? And we can't hear you, Deb. You got to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Yeah, most of you do not know me. My name is Debbie Eversole. I have been with the city in community development for 5 years now. And most recently, there was an opening in our community development block grant program administration. So I have taken on that role of administering that program, along with some of our housing grant programs and beautification programs, tax abatements, that sort of thing. So I am familiar with our fair housing consultant, Donald Eager. He does have legal representation at hand. So he's basically the one that we refer all of our fair housing concerns to. I have not personally received any at this time, but I know that it happens, and it shouldn't, but it does. And we have him on hand, to help us with that. So that is my involvement. And I do have his contact information if anybody would like to have that.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
We also have our city commissioner, who is now on our board, and we're very glad to have Mr. Poons on board.
Thank you.
Under new business, the Face Park gazebo is now ADA compliant. Yay! I know we talked about that for several meetings, and that did happen.
Aaron Klein may want to give more information on that.
New business that you don't have, I am a member of the National
Martha
Association.
Thompson.
National
He is
Association
now
of
joining.
Realtors. And in November, at their annual meeting, they had changed Article 10, Section 5, under the Code of Ethics. And now they have put in there, using harmful language, hate speech, slang based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, family status, national origin, sexual origin, or gender identity. So the National Association, which I'm a proud member of for over 35 years, this is an ongoing, ever-changing document that they add to. And it's not easy to get these things changed, and I commend the Board of Ethics that adds this in. A lot of times, the Code of Ethics actually precedes a lot of what state and federal laws pick up. In fact, we had articles in there against discriminatory action long before the 1968 Fair Housing was even passed, for those of you that remember back in 1968. Another article I picked up that I found interesting, and if you wonder why is this committee important and why does the city of Sandusky insist on we having this, this was a case that came out of Maumee, Ohio. They're suing 2 real estate companies and 2 real estate agents. Mr. Franklin, who is African American, is Chief Financial Officer for the Fire Department of Toledo, and his wife, who is Caucasian, is a registered nurse anesthesiologist. Probably pretty good high-paying positions in both of them. They had friends that lived in this Zoom Lake Township. They wanted to buy a little lake. It's a small little private gated community. They were informed the house was for $350,000. They made a $300,000 offer after touring the house. The homeowner, who was Caucasian, came back and said, I will only sell this house to you for $350,000, no inspections and no financing. Yeah, believe it or not, this stuff still happens. At this point, the Franklins decided to walk away. Being a small community, in fact that everything is on record and everything, pended them to start a lawsuit when they found later a white couple paid $300,000, did obtain financing, and were allowed to do a home inspection. This is now slowly through the court system. It is now in federal court. So, believe it or not, discriminatory actions are still out there. And I still can't believe that Tiffin, with 2 universities in the state and the county capital, does not have a fair housing or ADA board. So the city of Sandusky should be very proud of themselves they have this. One thing that's not on your old business, but it is my old business, and since we have Mr. Poons with us, I would like him to take back to City Council a recommendation or an ordinance to be written that any funded projects by the city, as far as grants, any money, lends, do anything like that, that the engineers review that and make sure it is now up to current ADA standards. And as Brian will tell you, ADA standards have changed over the last couple of years. It used to be 36-inch hallways. Now, to my knowledge, it's 42, Brian, and you're muted. You're still muted, Brian. Oh. Well, I got you muted. I hate when I can't find the unmute button. You can shake your head and say, yes, ADA rules have changed along the way.
Who unmutes him? We can't hear him.
It's an issue, he has to unmute his computer.
Brian, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
There we go. I keep doing it. Yeah, in general, that's a correct statement, although it's very situational. But in general, things have changed.
Because we did know of one case where somebody was obtained some city money and made modifications, but the modifications weren't up to current ADA standard. So if Mr. Poons, if you'd like to write something in that and submit it to the city council on behalf of the ADA Fair Housing Advisory Board, I would greatly appreciate that.
Okay, hang on, so I understand what you want to do. Start at the beginning and repeat it again, what we're trying to accomplish. Ultimately, what needs to be, let's settle on what you want to accomplish. The board will make a motion. I'm formulating how to get this done, but I just need you to be a little more clear about what exactly it is you're trying to accomplish. So just go again, tell me again what you're trying to get done.
I guess anytime the city is involved in any of that grants or funding or even approval of modifications, that it is made sure that the engineers review those plans and make sure that it is up to current ADA standards.
Okay.
We do know of one program that a business did get some money, but the modifications weren't done or done up to current ADA standards, and it was brought to our attention.
Okay, what are you talking about, so I understand, where did that happen? Because normally, anything that is new being brought, improvements, what we're asking for is already supposedly done. If it didn't occur on a specific property, there may be a different approach to this. I'm going somewhere. When I get some more information, I'll explain what I think we should
Brought to our
do.
attention that Cameo received some money, and they did not make the modifications up to code.
Okay, did they, after the fact, did the city make them make the proper modifications? It ultimately got fixed. Okay, potentially, and I see Aaron's picture here, so he's unmuted, so I assume he's muted, so I assume he's listening. It sounds like it was a mistake that happened with the Cameo, that ultimately we need, which means we just need to do what we are supposed to do better. May I suggest that this committee, that we ask the engineer or the law director, whoever, because you talked about legislation, let's look at the process that they have now and see how we can get, especially new things, new projects that the city's going into, that they send those plans through the ADA committee, because we take a broader, a much more specific view at just ADA things. And additionally, ADA regulations are pretty much minimum. Just get you through the door. And folks that are like this committee that is designed specifically to look at ADA issues are likely to come up with ways to spot things that will allow the city to avoid having to go back and do things over again. And also identify more than just the minimum. I don't think, and you folks can talk about, and we need some feedback from the committee, that the city of Sandusky should be known for doing the minimum required for ADA. And simple as that, the people here who actually have disabilities or pay close attention to it are going to say, well, wait a second, if we add additional handrail, whatever it may be here, as we did at Lions Park, when we had to go back after the fact to allow the benches on the side of the pathway to be accessible. We had to go back and do it over. That should have been done as part of the project. And so, please, folks on the committee, let me hear what you think about that as a direction to go, as something that we would want to do. How can we help the city not have mistakes on the front end?
and redo projects. Brian, I saw you had your hand up.
Please speak.
I did have my hand up. I know with existing structures, it gets into, there's a lot of caveats that go along with trying to upgrade an existing facility, whereas the building code allows a lot of exceptions. But I think, Jeff, what you're getting at is you think that our board should come together and ask Mr. Poole to present maybe raise the level of the ADA compliance for city projects. Is that kind of what I'm hearing, above and beyond what the Ohio Building Code recommends or dictates?
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Is that kind of what you're getting at, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and those are my thoughts on this. It's like, what does this committee have in expertise that can add to and broaden our ability to make improvements for folks that need accessibility, have accessibility issues? Ms. Corso, do you have any thoughts? I'm looking at your picture, and your brain seems to be moving in thought.
I think I don't disagree at all with what Jeff is saying. I do believe that there has to be a middle ground or a middle balance that is met anytime we start to discuss these types of issues, because sometimes, as though it may be considered from our perspective a reasonable accommodation to go above the minimum standard, we still have to balance that with the financial concerns and the financial expectations of, is it also not only reasonable, but is it an over financial burden? So I think that there has to be both parts, and there has to be a lot of compromise between the city's perspective and potentially the committee's perspective as well.
Mr. Klein, I see you have your hand up. And you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Through the chairman to the committee, I think there's actually, if I'm understanding correctly, I think there might be actually two things that are being discussed here. The first one, when you're referencing the Cameo, those are private property improvements that go through the building department and through the plan review process, and our department does not get involved with that. So there is that private issue that we might not have funding in it. I believe I can't recall if the Cameo did or did not, but there are those issues. But then the other issue is city-owned projects where we're managing and constructing, for example, Lions Park Pathway, doing those types of things. So I think if you are going to make recommendations to the commission for ordinances and things like that, to be very clear as to which ones you are referencing, because one will be a lot easier to do when you're talking about city projects than it would be with those outside building department. But I also would like to echo Ms. Corso's comments as well, that on several of these projects, there are definitely funding issues, but there's also, anytime we do the ODOT projects like you saw on Route 6, we do improve those curb ramps, and we did spend quite a bit of funding on those curb ramps this year, and that's a requirement when we do those projects based on those funding sources. So I'd be happy to get involved if Mr. Stanley or anybody else would need me to look at something, review something, just let me know.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
in listening to this, I'm trying to figure out where which direction to go over the solution, because everything everybody said is right, but it needs to be tied together, that in terms of what does this committee, what's our role in this? Ms. Corso and some of what was just said by Aaron deals with ultimately the solution to individual problems. How much money do we have? Middle ground on what's feasible to do. Those are fixing individual problems. What this committee its input is, how do we get involved so that we actually know what's going on? We're talking about with the Cameo.
Yes,
The issue with the Cameo, I'm not even sure how it came to you. So
It came to us through one of our members, and that's what we encourage. And
Well-
that's how the gazebo came to our attention, is through one of the members up here that said, hey, that gazebo is nice, but
That's good.
Get up to it.
The point is, waiting for somebody to, after a project's been done, and waiting for someone to decide that they're willing to complain about it is way at the end. And we really want to say, as a committee, we need to be figuring out with the city. I listened with what Aaron said, dealing with the private project at the Cameo, that it wasn't the engineering department, it was another department, and it slipped through those cracks. What we're looking for, and then on the other side, city projects, which the engineer specifically deals with, that's another, it's a different animal, but the goal is the same. For staff, which they all work together through the city manager, we're asking, I think we should ask to start this is for the staff to tell us what do they think they can do to change the process so this stuff doesn't slip through the cracks. Dealing with the public projects that the engineer does, that perhaps we can give some input at the front end of how we may or may not be able to afford to do it better than the minimums that the federal government says. And then on the other side, and again, we're asking staff to come up with this. We're not going to dictate to them. We would like the outcome to be that when a private project comes through, that their review is broader and deeper than just, did they meet the minimums? And also, how do we avoid a place like the one you said at the Cameo and the gazebo, that it wasn't done properly at all? And so the first step, and it may take several months to get it done, is a resolution, or you folks can ask a request through the committee, you take a vote on it, that I'll go back to the commission and ask that we ask the staff to start working something up that says what works for you, that you can pass things through this committee that we can be of service. After a month from now, when I get back to it, we'll go from there. We can go decide whether or not this is going to work, and maybe we can, this is about negotiating back and forth until we get something that works. But the idea here is you can't build gazebos. We should not have on Route 6, even though it's an ODOT project, no handicap accessibility off that curb that we have on Tiffin Ave. We don't want that to happen again. It should not occur. And now we're looking at, and I was going to bring up under the old business about Tiffin Ave, because I see it's in your minutes, what are we going to do about it? So.
And I don't think our intent is ever to slow down a project,
We don't.
but get ahead of the curve.
May I suggest, I agree that's what our intentions are. Projects take the time that they take to come out. We're only interested in the outcome. And how long it takes is how long it takes for the cake to bake. And no, we obviously are not going to slow it down. And please, feedback on what I just said in terms of what we want to do, because I want to be clear about how we go forward from here.
So if all of you would give some thought to that, and either reach out to me or reach out to Elizabeth on what your thoughts are on this, we can then get it to Councilman.
Could I make a Jeff, this is Kathy
Yes.
Rickens. Could I make a suggestion?
Please.
It seems like it would be a reasonable thing to have someone from the engineering staff or whatever in a wheelchair, or again, I volunteer to do it anytime. When they're doing these things, have somebody there who's not able to walk, even if it is somebody that can walk, just have them in a wheelchair as though they couldn't, and have them see how accessible the gazebo is, how accessible that swing is at the Shoreline Park, things like that. And then they would see what people that are in a wheelchair that can't walk have to face the challenges. But if they want to volunteer to do it for them, I'll be glad to do it. But if they just have somebody think about it as they're doing these things, and, if I'm in a chair and I can't walk, best would be to be in a chair so they could see, not just imagining it, but be in a chair.
And that is a good idea, and I think it was a Margaretta school teacher that did that last year.
Exactly. Yep.
put some of her children in wheelchairs and said, this is what your current other student goes through on a daily basis.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, may I suggest what Mrs. Wiggins is suggesting here is really no more than a consultant that we don't have to pay $200 an hour for. So really, this is
You know,
within, this is what we do with
you don't have
projects
to
all
pay
along. 'Cause that's really what we have here, is a volunteer consultant that actually knows something or has some input that we're just saying that we'd like to get it. And we're asking staff, because we're not here to tell staff how to do work, to come back with what we're offering to be of value, and staff can come back next month and with some suggestions about how to implement it. And Aaron, this is, I guess, where you can get into the conversation that says, say, yeah, I kind of get what you're trying to do, and I'll take it back to staff and work on it. And in that case, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have to get into formal motions and so forth. We'll just massage this until it works. And Diane and Brian, please jump in here, because all I'm describing is a process to get us to an end that does not disrupt the work that the staff is doing routinely. Does that make sense to you? So please say something.
I just want to point out that Martha Thompson, she joined the call late, but she is on the call now too.
Yeah, we heard her.
Okay.
I really believe that, yes, it's certainly not our responsibility to tell the city how they should and shouldn't do projects, et cetera. But to provide some feedback might be a benefit for everyone. And I agree with you, Commissioner, that it could be something maybe as simple as just a process change or just a process input opportunity.
And certainly with the exception of Brian, who is an engineer, most of us have limited knowledge of this. I have some in that I worked on it with Easter seals back in the Stone Ages before it even became state and federal law. But I know that is an ongoing, ever-changing document also.
Brian's hands up.
Yeah, Brian?
Hey, Jeff. First, I'll correct you. I'm not an engineer. I'm an architect. I take offense to that. But in general, I think the sentiment is good from Kathy. It's nice to have that firsthand knowledge of what we're lacking. The practical part of me sees this kind of consultancy coming after the fact, where changes are more expensive and more costly to make. If there was a way, I don't know what way it is, something for us to think about, but maybe her general feedback on some of the past projects are incorporated better into the future projects. That's probably the right solution, instead of having a person there on site kind of dictating how things are laying out as they're being built. I don't think that's very practical. I think the post-occupancy assessment is probably the more beneficial way to go.
You'll have done some building, it's easier to change on paper than it is on site. Any other comments on this subject?
Just where are we leaving this? What are we going to do? Turn it over to staff and go from there? I really don't want to go to commission and make statements until we know for sure what we're doing, and that we've dealt with the staff offline early enough before we get into commission. I can talk individually to a couple commissioners about what we're trying to do, but Aaron and Brian, since you're an engineer, you're in a better position to identify where this kind of additional advice fits into the process, because you guys work with the process all the time. So does that sound like a place we can go here? Come back next month or over the next few weeks, just think about how we're going to do that. All I think we're doing is saying ADA committee would like to be able to help so that we don't end up having to redo projects unnecessarily. If it's little more than, depending on the scope and how big the project is, the engineering department can simply, for on our public projects, come to the ADA board, make a presentation specifically dealing with the ADA aspects of any project. If it's no more than sending copies to, and since Brian is an architect, he can look at them. I mean, we have representation that those of us who are not architects, engineers, we've got somebody in Brian that can give us feedback. And then on the other side, we have Mrs. Wickens, who is a user that can talk about these kinds of things, and likewise with Martha. It's just a question of whether we're willing to work together and work on it in that fashion.
So I encourage all of you to share any ideas you have on this with me or with Elizabeth, and we can compose something and get it out before our next meeting and see if we can move this forward, because it has been on old business for a couple meetings. Any other discussion on this subject? Moving on to old business, we must determine our 3 other meetings, and hopefully they'll be all together, because it's nice at least to have company up here this time. Normally they make me sit here all by myself. You know, Elizabeth hides in the back of the room. You know. Does Monday about this time work for the majority of the people?
Yes, for me.
I'm seeing a lot of heads shaking, yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Good, thank you. I'd like to see our next meeting on July 7th. That gives us time to discuss, 1, whether we'll meet in public, and 2, we'll have enough lead time to know if the city is doing their 4th of July event downtown, which we all know got canceled last year. Hopefully we will be through this thing. I mean, I'm so tired of it. I've had 2 cruises canceled and 1 convention. And then
July 7th, Jeff, July 7th would be after the 4th of July.
I mean June 7th, I'm sorry.
Okay, there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah, June 7th, September 6th, and November 1st are tentative. They're all Mondays. They're all the first of the month, which seems to be easier for all of us to remember and put in that. Do I have any objections or conflicts? I know this is throwing it way out there for a lot of people, and we all know stuff comes up very often, and I do appreciate all of you making the effort to get out here. As I'm driving down Columbus Avenue, I'm thinking, why didn't I set this up as a Zoom meeting for myself?
Hey, Jeff, you said September 6th.
It's June 7th, September 6th, and November 1st.
September 6th is Labor Day, correct?
If I looked at my calendar right, that's a Monday also. Yeah, September 6th is a Monday. That's the first Monday of the month. And then November 1st is the first Monday of the month. And the consensus seems to be that 1 o'clock, either in person or on Zoom.
September 6th is Labor Day.
It's a city. It's
Oh,
a
that's Labor Day.
It's a
My
holiday.
phone doesn't tell me that.
Mine, yeah. Get an apple.
Yeah. Okay. I think if we move it to the 13th, that still gives us enough time to know if the city is going to have their downtown 4th of July event.
Talking about September, sir.
So,
So June 7th, September 13th, and November 1st. Is that correct?
well, we firmed out that,
Yes.
yes.
See what November 1st is. It's not a holiday, so it's good. I'll make a motion, we accept those dates.
I'll entertain a second.
I'll second.
I second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Elizabeth got all that? She's back there diligently typing away.
I didn't hear any opposition.
Elizabeth is going to send you that article I read from. It goes more into depth than what I just read. But as I said, if somebody belonged to the National Association for over 35 years, you can see how the Code of Ethics, which is basically deals with fair housing and civil rights, they look at stuff and say, oh, wait a second, let's think about this. And it's usually a 2-year process to get any one of these addendums changed. It's kind of like changing something in the Constitution. It's a long, drawn-out process. And they really spearheaded this thing through right away. So kudos to our people that are involved in that, professional standards. And I sit on professional standards both locally and sometimes I get called down to Columbus. Anything else for the meeting today? I always told you I would keep it under an hour.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a question.
Yes.
As I brought up earlier about Tiffin Ave. Has anybody said, is this my first meeting, has this committee set a priority of any sort on that area? I mean, how important is it for that particular intersection to be taken care of, repaired, upgraded, I should say?
After I dealt with the person who had commented about their concern regarding it, I know that Mr. Klein had spoken with them or someone from his office had spoken with them. So that might be answered by him at this point so we can get a more comprehensive update.
Wes, what intersection are you talking about? Tiffin Ave and Venice?
Tiffin and Mills. Tiffin and Mills, I actually looked at it, and yes, you have no ability to come across the street from, there's at the intersection, it's diagonal. It's a weird intersection, but the point is, not only is it not handicap accessible, it doesn't even have painted lines for crossing, even if it wasn't handicap accessible from one of the directions. Why ODOT or how we did not insist or fund it, and that's past tense now, why it didn't get done the first time. If ODOT's done with the project, and Aaron, you can step in and say whether it's true or not, it was an ODOT project. If they've turned it over to us, it sounds like it may very well be our problem. And so it's about identifying how important it is to take care of it. And then figuring out when we're going to be able to in relationship to other things that we're doing here in the city. Thank you.
So just to bring everyone up to speed, I spoke with Jerry Bance from ODOT based on a concern that was brought to my attention, as well as Luke Wasicki, et cetera. And the last correspondence that I had was on September 29th, where Jerry Bance from ODOT indicated that he would agree with Luke from ODOT, that the crosswalks and ramps are acceptable currently and allow pedestrians to access all corners of the intersection. I then followed up with the person who had contacted me, who had made the original complaint to the office. He remained unresolved with the issue. And so I then further had asked that someone reach out to him, and on October 2nd, Mr. Klein had said that he would reach out to him, is kind of where it brings it up to speed as of now. I'm sure that Aaron got a hold of him.
So do we know if it's getting resolved or in the process? And
I think you need to ask Aaron.
Through the chairman, I don't see, I did speak with the person that put in the complaint. He's the resident that's on the corner there, and his complaint is not just that it's not handicap accessible, but he thinks all of the sidewalks in front of his building need to be replaced because the new sidewalks are a different color than the old sidewalks. So he, looking at it, it is ADA accessible. All four corners are accessible. I agree that the condition that it is now, and that the crosswalks going north-south on Mills and then crossing on the north side of that intersection is the way that it should be. I don't think that there should be a crosswalk on the south side of the intersection, personally. I think it's a safety concern with the building that's on that corner. I explained it to the resident. He did not agree, but that's fine. We don't always agree on everything, but I wasn't planning on doing anything differently at that intersection, and I did let him know that.
Did you feel as though it was a concern because the building sits out too far and that there isn't visibility to know whether or not it's safe to cross?
Yeah, through the chairman, my biggest concern is for a child on a bike that might be going as fast as they can through there. If they see the crosswalk lines going to the north, they would have a tendency to stop and change direction. If they say they're coming from Mills going northwesterly on Mills, and they're on the south side of the road and they're just riding their bike on the sidewalk and they can't see if traffic is coming, children don't necessarily stop or slow down to look for cars. They see that crosswalk and they just go. And with that building there, they won't see it. And I think you're opening up more pedestrian concerns at that location because of how close that building is. It's right on the property lines. And to me, the ADA requirement is the slopes and, the cross slopes and those types of things, and that you have access to all four corners. And it's not uncommon at intersections to only have crosswalks at 3 locations. And if you look over at Huron Park, those, where there's 3, 4, 5 streets coming all together, there were actually crosswalks that were removed at that location as well because of the safety concerns of people crossing in multiple spots, and the traffic coming in the blind spots because of that. So there were some things that were done. ODOT, their project is simply to replace and improve what's there, not to necessarily come in, add crosswalks or take them out unless the city requests it. So that's why it was just replaced as part of that project.
And I know I've been reading some, and I'm sure so of you have, that some of the bike paths that Huron has just put in is causing some problems.
No. I had a lot. I'm thinking you did.
Is somebody speaking?
I'm getting some feedback, but I'm not showing any mics open.
*6, you can mute yourself. She muted herself. She's good.
Okay, I'm not sure what anybody else thinks. The safety explanation that we got from, that Aaron just put in, I'm visualizing in my mind what he said, without being on the corner to totally get it. It's a consideration that this should be made to determine whether or not the right decision was made to not fix the intersection. As a matter of process, this has been dragging on for a long period of time, dealing with the guy being unhappy with it, and I think that we're at the start of an answer for the citizen dealing with that. If we believe that a child is more likely to stop because the curb hasn't been knocked, it doesn't have a crosswalk, and we think it's actually unsafe, then as a city, that would be the solution, the answer. And Aaron, I'll just work with you later. For me, just kind of talking about amongst ourselves here to where everybody here is happy, that doesn't resolve it with the city's position on it. So I'll get back with you about how we put that in writing. Since it came up at this committee, we need more than just talk. We will just, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but it needs to show in the minutes that we've actually addressed it completely as an ADA committee and that we're satisfied with the answer that you gave, as opposed to just talking back and forth and then accept his conclusion. Does that make sense? And by June,
I agree.
by the July meeting, we should be able to do this formally.
He's moving forward on this
That's fine.
and getting closer than we were.
Yeah, and this is really about process. If we're going to be a committee of any value that makes a worthwhile meeting, then we take problems or suggestions and we work them through and we come to a conclusion. And we're on the verge of a conclusion with this one. I just don't fully understand exactly what he said, what Aaron was talking about, but I got a good idea, and it seems to make some sense that we can say, we accept that conclusion, and then it's closed, instead of just continually being brought up from complaints from citizens. So that's all. Let's go home.
Okay, any thoughts, please get to me, get to Elizabeth, get to Councilman Poon. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Don't everybody raise their hands at once.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Be safe out there driving, it's kind of ugly.